So hello and welcome to the Clinical Liver Diseases video series. CLD is an official digital learning publication of the AASLD. I'm Julius Wilder, an assistant professor of medicine here at Duke University and associate editor for social media for CLD. And I'm honored to be joined by the author of the article, Historical Aspects of the Hepatorenal Syndrome, Dr. Florence Wong, joining me all the way from Toronto. And this is a really interesting article that's a little different from the things that we publish at CLD, but nonetheless a great learning opportunity and really interesting knowledge here. Dr. Wong, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You know,
it was fun writing the article.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to read this article. Can you just maybe begin with sort of talking to us a little bit about the history of ascites?
Well, ascites has been known for a long time, for actually several millennia. The ancient Greeks knew about it, but I couldn't find any information as to how they made a diagnosis of ascites within the abdomen. Clearly, they didn't have ultrasound, and I couldn't find any information as to how, whether they learned to do percussion to diagnose the ascites, but they clearly knew how to do large volume paracentesis because there were lots of historical articles about putting trocars into the abdomen, and there are different sorts of trocars that people were using. I had lots of information on that, and as you can see in the article, there were lots of Greek words referring to ascites and also the instruments that were used to treat the ascites.
That's fascinating. You know, the idea that it was recognized and the sort of the historical instruments that were used to manage it. You know, one of the things that you speak to is something that I never had heard of, quite frankly, until this article, which is the head out of water immersion. Could you tell us a little bit about what that is and maybe even a little bit about what it might be today in terms of practice?
So I actually first learned about head out of water immersion going back to my fellowship years in Australia. I actually came from Australia and moved to Toronto 30 years ago. And I was doing sodium infusions into cirrhotic patients, and I presented at a meeting and someone asked me about head out of water immersion. That was the first time I learned about it. The inventor is actually Dr. Murray Epstein, who is currently still working at the University of Miami. So the idea is to push all the tissue fluid from outside the circulation into the circulation, so you better fill the intravascular volume, and that would lead to natriuresis and diuresis. And I think you're reading the article that, and I can't remember the exact number, for every foot that you immerse the patient, you actually exert a certain amount of pressure, and that will push a certain amount of fluid into the circulation. So when I first came to Toronto 30 years ago, there was a tank in our physiology laboratory, and we would put acidic patients into the tank, soak them at 37 degrees up to the neck, and then they would pee in the tank. And then we would have to empty it out, clean it for the next patient. So we don't have the tank anymore. So now I ask patients who have a lot, especially those with a lot of peripheral edema, to go to a spa, soak themselves up to the neck, and if they're a bubble jet, that would exert additional pressure to push the fluid from the tissue into the circulation, and ensure they'll have a natriuresis and a diuresis.
It's fascinating, and a great reason to go to the spa, right? I mean, that's really more incentive. That is really interesting. So, when you think about this amazing article and this sort of fascinating history around ascites and portal hypertension and hepatorenal syndrome, you know, what are some of the things that you'd like for authors to take away from this?
Well, basically, these two conditions have been around for a long time. Hepatorenal syndrome, people have had a lot of trouble understanding exactly what it is. And it's only in the last couple of centuries that we've understood the ideas that have evolved behind hepatorenal syndrome. And these concepts have helped us to understand why hepatorenal syndrome is such a deadly condition. And I think the greatest improvement that we've made is now recognizing it's not a threshold of creatinine that we need to use to diagnose hepatorenal syndrome, but rather a change in the serum creatinine. So hopefully in the future, we will see patients with renal dysfunction being treated at a lower level of serum creatinine with better results.
That's a great point. And really on behalf of all of us on the CLD team, Dr. Wong, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're very busy, but this is such a great article. It was wonderful to get your insight around this. And to our viewers, we hope you found this video useful as well. For more information about liver disease, please visit us at www.cldlearning.com. Thank you so much for watching.